Nikki Foley here, and we're back with another episode of Paladin Financial Talk. And I'm with my co-host here, Tony Shore. It's always nice to have you with us, and I love my conversations with you.
Excellent.
And today, we're going to continue our topic on happy retirement. So let's just do a little rewind of where we have been. And our summer is coming to an end, which means some of these lighter topics are coming to an end. But I promise you,
sad.
I have a great schedule for us in the fall as well. And
Good.
Some of the things that we've talked about, we started with Jeff and I a few weeks ago when we were talking about that transition to retirement. And a lot of our conversation was on the emotional aspect of it, but we certainly got into a few of the tangible pieces, like working with a professional and how that can be a great partnership. Matt and Jeff were on a few weeks ago as well, and they were talking about the retirement manifesto. And I think the easiest way to say that and what they were talking about is, what do you want your bumper sticker or your obituary to say, and being able to look back and make sure that you can accomplish those things.
Yeah. That's right.
Mr. Quick was with us, was it last week, I believe, and he had more of the tangible things. So what are the things that you want to have in place as you are thinking about retirement so that once you get there, every day can be a Saturday, I think was the
Every
name.
day is a Saturday in retirement. Yep.
I feel like he does such a nice job of being creative with his titles, and I thought that one was a fun one for everybody to listen to. And so today, we're going to talk about retirement parties. It might not be exactly what you're expecting, but retirement parties are a key piece of things. And then we'll wrap up the end of the month here with Ellie, and she's going to talk about retiring young and what that might look like.
Wow. Well, and Ellie's great too, but retirement parties, I've never really thought about that.
Well, we just had a party last night for all of our clients, and so I got my juices flowing about what this could look like. You know, Tony, I don't know that we've talked a lot about my background, but I'll tell you a little bit about, I love the people side of things, and I joke about it. But really, my schooling was very much on people. And so my background is in corporate communications and sociology. I really thought I was going to go into counseling of some sort.
Oh, wow.
But I ended up in human resources, which isn't actually that far apart from it's working with people in an environment.
Yeah.
And so I've always liked that side of things. And so operations is where I spent a lot of time professionally. But guess what I got to do? And you already know some of this, but I got to spend a lot of years event planning, from 30 people on up to 530 people.
Right.
And so I've found that even though I like the event planning side of things, it's about the people for me and how somebody feels when they're at an event and so forth. And so today we are going to talk about event planning. Doesn't matter the size, and it really might not be a traditional event like you might think about. And so we're going to go through this in like the who, what, where, when, why format, because I think that'll help us stay organized on our thoughts here.
Right.
But I want to talk about the goal up front. And I think the goal is really where you can get an event can get out of scope and be actually a stressor quite quickly if you don't keep focused on some of the key things. And so I kind of mentioned this, but making everyone feel like they are the most important person in the room. And so when somebody leaves an event, whether big or small, or maybe it's just two of us, it's about how somebody feels when they walk away. And I think that's the most important piece of this, especially as you're talking about somebody's retirement, is how did they feel as they bring this big major event to a conclusion, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. You know, I don't know if I've ever been to a retirement party.
Well,
believe it or not.
I think retirement parties can take on a couple different forms, and we're going to go through what looks like here today. But I think another piece of it is life experience. And what does that life experience mean for the person that's retiring? And, you know, I don't want to get too far into introverts and extroverts, but it might depend on the person, what they find to be enjoyable, and making sure that it really is tailored towards them. And that's where the meaningful and the memorable comes in, is because it has to work for them and who they are.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think you make a great point. Obviously, you want to start retirement off on the right note, and you want people to feel good about retirement. So I like the idea of having retirement parties, and not just for the companies they work at. I have been to parties where they have I have been to parties at companies for people who are leaving, not necessarily retirement. And I know when I lived and worked in Nashville, and I really had a great job and loved everyone I worked with and got along well. And when I said I'm leaving to move back to Minnesota, they threw a huge party and made me feel like I was really going to be missed. And I really hadn't had that at any company before, and I just felt so great about that. I'll never forget it. I mean, they had a huge custom cake, and they gave me gifts, and they invited me back.
And those are the things, whether it hasn't been a retirement party for you that you've experienced, but was it memorable? Absolutely. You
Right.
just described that. And so I think that's the point, is drawing on other experiences that you've had and other events that you've been to.
Sure.
And how do you bring that to life for the person? And so, as we talk about this, I can bounce back and forth between, are we talking about throwing a party for yourself or potentially getting a friend to do it for you? Or we might be talking about you throwing it for a friend and a family member or a coworker, but that can get confusing. So I'm just
Sure.
going to kind of give some facts here and some
Okay.
ideas and not try to bounce between who is doing what.
Sure.
But I think the point is, whoever's listening, apply it to what they're going through and what might be appropriate for them. All right. So, Tony, like I said, we're going to do this who, what, where, when type of format.
Got it.
So let's talk a little bit about that extrovert-introvert conversation. Like I said, I don't want to go too deep on this one, but life is oftentimes designed for extroverts. And when you think of party,
True.
what did you think of, Tony, when I said party?
Well, the first thing I think of is cake.
Rightfully so. Cake and ice cream. Don't leave out the ice cream, Tony.
No, I thought about a group of people getting together to have fun. I thought about socialization.
Yeah, you absolutely do. When somebody says party, you
Yeah.
think about many people gathered together doing something, usually in a room, and cake and ice cream is oftentimes part of it.
Right.
But we don't want to forget our introvert friends who may not be the life of the party, but that doesn't mean that they don't want fun and they don't want meaningful. And so for them, as you look at who you are having the party for, get a good gauge on, are they an extrovert or introvert?
Sure.
Usually the person that's going to be hosting is going to have a pretty good idea of who that person is. And so for introverts, it might be more along the lines of finding something that is of passion for them. I mean, passion can mean more than friendship. Oftentimes in an introvert relationship, small but mighty might be a theme that you want to think through as well. Unique and unusual, and we've talked about a few things like that on some previous shows, and I'll come back to that one. But that meaningful connections and being in an environment where the introvert gets to be themselves is going to be a key from that perspective. And we already know what the extroverts want. We don't have to
Yeah.
go through too many details
Yeah.
on that.
It's funny that you talk about introverts and extroverts at parties, because I just think of you and your brother Matt at a party last night. He's somewhat more of an introvert.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought of Matt. So you need to find something that he can be involved in,
Yeah.
or something that is a passion of his.
Yeah, let's take a few of us in the office. So I am more the individual where if I'm at a party, I want to make sure I hit as many people as
You
possible.
want to talk to everybody.
You got it. I
Yeah.
want to make sure they're having a great time. I'm
Right.
service oriented, and so I want to know how I can help them and make them feel very comfortable.
Sure.
My brother Matt, on the other hand, he is more of, probably I would say parts of him are introverted. And so he's going to want to make sure he had really good conversations, things that were comfortable for him along the way. It was funny when we were preparing for the party last night. And again, all of our clients were invited last night. Dory was talking about people's birthdays and making sure we had a few things teed up for Jeff so that as he was making his rounds, he knew some important details.
Yeah.
Including what kind of ice cream we were having and some
Oh, yeah.
very specific things.
Sure.
And she was funny about it, but she knows he is also, even though he can turn on his extrovertedness, he is naturally an introvert. And so she was giving him things that were important for connections, but giving him things to talk about so that he would be comfortable with the environment.
Sure.
And so it really does have a lot to do with who the people are that
Right.
you're with.
That's true. That's true.
So going back to the what, and as we get into some ideas and what this could look like, I think it's important that whoever is planning this, it is not a stressor. And if you have event planners out there or even people that have hosted events, they're going to be like, that's not possible. Well, it is, of course, going to be a stressful situation, but at the same time, it should be a guiding principle for as you're having an event, You don't want all the details to overwhelm you because, again, back to what we started with, it's about, is it meaningful for the person that you're celebrating in this retirement situation?
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
And so how they feel when they walk away from the evening is the key piece of it. So, okay, let's get into the what's and some ideas here. I know there are a million ideas out there, and you can be creative and magical and all that, but let's talk about those introverts again for a second. And so looking for passions rather than this huge event situation. Maybe it's something unique like volunteering with some like-minded people. And that seems like such an odd thing to say for a retirement party, but if you are an introvert, it's about who you're with. It's about doing something you're passionate about. And so it is a little bit different than having cake and ice cream.
Yeah.
So maybe you get people together that have similar passions, and it may not be all the people that you would expect to be there, but if it's meaningful, that's what it's about. Small but mighty. Think about things that you might want to do, like a tour of some sort. It could even be touring your lake, something local here. It doesn't mean you have to go on a trip to do a tour, but things that are small, but they could be, it can be bigger than life along the way. Or maybe it's a restaurant where you would never normally go to, but you have your close-knit group that it's small but mighty. Or some of the things that we've talked about in the past. One of the things that I think I'd used on another show was when my dad retired, we bought him the race car. He got to drive a race car.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, things like that. Or skydiving. Tony, have you been skydiving?
I have not and will not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And many people probably feel the same. So about knowing your person you're celebrating, but that might be something that is on somebody's bucket list. And if
Sure.
you know the person, what's on their bucket list, and how do you peel back or offer them some sort of an event or a life experience that aligns with that?
Sure.
Another thing that might fall into line with an introvert is, do they have a passion to do something like learn a new language? And if you are one of their friends or family members, maybe you offer to learn that new language with them.
Sure.
And at the end, you plan a week trip to wherever that might be. Again, is that meaningful? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I like that idea. That sounds more my speed.
There you go.
Yeah.
Tony, we're going through all of this. What would a retirement party look like for you?
Boy, I don't know. That's a great question. I do like to travel, but that's not really ideal for a party. It's more about the people for me, I think, as far as a retirement party.
Yeah.
People and food
have to
be. Those are my two favorites.
There you go. We could plan a whole party around those two things, I feel like, Tony. But I think you said something important there, that it doesn't seem like it falls under the party headline or header there when you talk about doing something smaller, but it could be if you're with the right people and it
Sure.
had the right food and it's
Yeah.
the right experience. And so Tony, if I could figure out a way to get your favorite musician in a small environment with just a few of your closest people, would that be something that would be good?
That would be a dream come true. Yeah. That would be huge.
Yeah. Exactly. And so the list for extroverts clearly is long, and I think that you can have a lot of fun with that. And maybe you're not somebody that is enjoys putting a party together. It doesn't mean that it has to be you that does all of this. Maybe you have somebody that's part of your friend group, or you even want to hire a professional to do something for the retiree. And so
I would just hire you, Nikki.
there you go.
You've got the experience.
I even hire people when I don't feel like I have time for it. I know there's only so many hours in the day, and so I call on my some of my friends that have a little more time or a little more passion than me on it. Taking something ordinary and making it extraordinary, I think, is something that's important in no matter what size of party you're having. But taking a get-together and adding a theme to it gets everybody excited. And so I think about some of the events that you and I have attended together when there is a themed night, it just ups the enthusiasm. And so whether it's dressing in black and gold or whether it's putting on your cowboy attire.
Or an 80s night, yeah.
Exactly. It takes it to a whole nother level.
It does.
Guess what it does? It gives people something to talk about and to rally around. And I think that's important as you think about fun and games and themes.
Themes is a great one.
Yeah, it absolutely adds a whole nother element. Things like doing potentially, you hear about when people retire, they do roast, and they are, that might be work for somebody's personality, but it might not work for another personality. And
Right.
so, but you can have similar concepts of maybe making it an awards night. And so celebrating,
That's a great idea.
yeah, all the things and all the accomplishments of that individual.
Or have some joke awards in there, too, to make it fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, for my 40th birthday party, my wife and friends got together and threw me a 40th in Nashville.
Okay.
We lived here at the time, but they had it in Nashville at a club that was underneath my favorite record store called The Basement. And we knew the owner of the building and the club, and one of my favorite artists played. They had played live. And they got up, and everybody, my friends one by one, got up and roasted me and some Nashville people that I worked with. And that was a lot of fun. I'm the type of person, I like the roast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a funny person, and you enjoy that. I don't think I was too far off in my retirement party idea for you then,
No,
Tony. I mean,
you weren't.
40th birthday, onto the retirement party.
Right. Yep.
You know, there's so many things that you can bring it up to. What's common and popular in today's, times. And I think about my dad is somebody that has found Facebook, and he really enjoys Facebook
Really?
right now. Yep.
Wow.
And so I never would have expected that. He is a farmer, and you're stereotyping people, but
Sure.
farmer wouldn't have ever thought that his cell phone would be connected to him, and especially not Facebook.
Well, right. Yeah.
Well, as people find interest and things like that, well, maybe it is putting your favorite memes that tie back to that individual, and everybody has to bring something like that. So rather than wearing the cowboy hat, they're doing something that's related to, again, an interest of that individual.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
You could go on and on with list of things, whether it's the themed parties or potentially getaways and trips. Maybe it's karaoke. I mean, gosh, I think that you and I could come up with a long list of things, and there's a many of them out there on the internet. So I don't know that having to spend a ton of time on all the different things, but cooking classes could be another one that's of interest to people. You could do, if you really wanted to go all out, or actually sticking with the cooking theme for a second, maybe it's a food tasting. Maybe it is an at-home dinner party, and you have a chef come in and actually cook for a small group of people.
That's a great idea, too.
Yeah, the ideas are endless, and so just getting your head around and then narrowing that list down and then getting it applied to the person, I think, is important. If you wanted to do something that's more along the wellness side of things, maybe you just have a group that does yoga in the morning, and it doesn't have to be an evening event. It doesn't have to be a huge blowout, but Pilates, yoga, workout, something like that.
Yeah, I like that, too.
Okay, so now we're going to transition from what, and I feel like the where and the when just tie into the what, so we're not going to spend a lot of time there. But let's talk just a little bit, if you are going to be the planner, about some of the things that go into this. And so knowing the timeline is an important piece of this, and when it's going to happen and what that looks like. A budget, and sometimes people feel really restricted by a budget, which is no surprise.
That's true.
But thinking about maybe the person that is retiring, it's important enough for them to do a celebration that they actually want to spend some money on this, and it's their idea and it's their party. They just don't want to be the person that plans it and has to do all the legwork. And thinking about families, oftentimes families will want to start traveling together, especially as the kids get a little bit older or grandkids get involved, and they want to do that Walt Disney trip, or they want to do the cruise or something like that. That might play into a retirement party, and that's how you spend the time. And the person that's retiring might be the one that wants to foot the bill. You can be very creative as it comes to what the budget might look like.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thinking about what the venue is. Again, maybe it's a cruise ship, or maybe it's the basement of your favorite record store.
Yeah,
and
that
then,
just ties to what you're going to do, yeah.
You got it, exactly. And then the invites. And this seems to be a place that people get caught up and held up on things, because it is, am I leaving people out? Am I including too many? Is the budget going to skyrocket? Well, maybe it's not hosting just one event.
Yeah. Who to invite and who not to invite is a big one. You're right. That's where a lot of people run into trouble when it comes to planning parties, isn't it?
And then they have a hard time even moving on, and they get stopped there. But point being is, as we go back to being meaningful, Maybe it's you do something with family. Maybe you have that yoga morning with some of your close friends, and you just have a number of very meaningful and memorable things in smaller pockets. And then you kind of get away from did I include or exclude, but you include in
Yes.
a different way.
Yep.
Another one, and then sometimes when I read articles, you think, oh my gosh, it's so opinionated or so dated or this or that. The South has very specific etiquette rules that still stand today.
Yes.
Other people and parties are more casual, and they don't even, it doesn't matter, it doesn't care. And it's very interesting how sometimes people get involved and they do have this set way of thinking. I think as it comes back to that, it's really about the individual that you're celebrating, and anything that works for them, I think is how you go with it. Whoever they are, if they are a casual person, let's not get caught up in the details of what etiquette might be or might not be. Now, some people might say that's an unpopular opinion, but are we happy and are we trying to celebrate the person? If we are, let's go with that as our leading theme on this.
That's a great idea. It really, if you wonder, should there be a dress code? Well, what is the person we're throwing the party like, right?
Yeah. It happens in weddings today. There's a lot of thoughts from, generations about what you should or you shouldn't do, and it can be a stressful, very stressful thing, and people have a lot of opinions, and I think
people have opinions about what should happen at weddings.
Yeah. And so I think as you start to plan events is that you're transparent, and it's all about the person that you're celebrating and what works for them and who they are.
I like that. Now, the big question that we haven't gotten to yet, Nikki, is why?
Okay, hold on. Before we go to the why, I have a couple more things, and I mentioned this one. So 3 more pieces really, is helpers. If you are not somebody that feels like you can manage all of the juggling of the details while also making sure that person feels like they're the most important person in the world, make sure that you bring in the backup and you assign duties and responsibilities.
Party by committee.
You got it. But your number one goal, as you go back to what are we doing here, is making sure that they're the most important person feel like the most important person in the room.
Yep, that's good.
One more story that I want to tell, and then we'll keep moving into the why here, is speakers, or having people that are there to tell stories about the person you're celebrating. I think back to my mom's funeral, and it was probably the most memorable part of my day was we had 3 speakers, and they were all from different points in her life and different that recognized who she was in her different settings. And so one was cousin, but also good friend from their childhood. One was her boss, who also happened to be a politician and somebody she had worked with for almost 20 years, an eloquent speaker, but the things that he got to share about her. And then she had done a lot of volunteering in her life, and it was somebody from that side of our world. And to hear their stories come to life, you got to see a different part of her that I might not have lived, every day. And so I think touches like that are really important to help celebrate the individual.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
And then things like additional touches, like, are you going to do potentially do a pictures or do a video of some sort, or are there things like that you want to add in that get to show, again, different points and different points in their life and a different side of the individual you're celebrating?
Yeah. I like it when they do that at funerals or weddings, big events where they have the audio, video, and people can see the slides and the pictures. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think especially as you get big events where it allows them to talk about things and have a common point that they can share when people don't know each other.
Right.
Okay, now into the why. And I know we've covered a lot of these things along the way, but retirement is a big deal. And so let's make sure that we commemorate it and that we get to celebrate the occasion. But more so, again, this is what all summer has been about. Experiences make people happy.
It's true.
And
they
that's
do.
the key.
I like that.
And so as you think about celebrating things, we haven't really said this specifically over the summer, but oftentimes happiness is derived from experiences and not from material goods. And so as you're thinking about things, being able to have that perspective might be important. There's research out there, and we have used it in other shows, but that there's deeper personal meaning when you're making connections, and the research says that when people are connecting, it's meaningful, and people are seeking human connections, and they're important to maintaining that healthy state of mind, and from both a physical and mental perspective. And when they have those connections, guess what? They value the event and perceive it to be, more connecting and more memorable. I keep using that word, but the connection is there.
Yeah.
And then you think about when people have something in common, they like to share their stories. And this is a great place for them to be able to do that and really celebrate the person.
Yeah, that's probably the most enjoyable part. Like when I was talking about my 40th birthday party, is people getting up and telling stories, right? And that's the best. That's what people remember. And
that's absolutely. And that brings me really to my conclusion is, and I've said it throughout, and we keep talking about it in different, applicable examples, but was it meaningful and was it memorable? And that can mean something different, but it's how somebody felt when they walked out at the end of the night. Was it something that made them feel like they were the most important person in the room? And that's what you're going for.
Yeah, and the most important part isn't going to be gifts, if that's a part of it, or even the food or a cake. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to be the memories that people shared and the meaning of it.
You got it.
Yeah.
So I think if this is not something that you enjoy and have a passion about, like planning an event, but you have somebody in your life that you want to make sure you're celebrating, hire somebody. Delegate that out to your kids or your neighbor or whoever it might be, because everybody likes an event and everybody likes what it means and the connection that goes along with it.
Yeah, and you don't have to go it alone. I like that too. Yeah. Incorporate family and friends to make it happen.
You got it. All right. Well, Tony, this brings us to our conclusion. So another episode of Paladin Financial Talk. If you're interested in having additional conversations, not about I guess you can call me if you do want to talk about event planning, but if you want to talk about retirement planning more specifically, we'd love to hear from you. 651-842-8406 is our phone number. You can also reach us at our new URL, that is paladinfinancial.com. Again, paladinfinancial.com. And we'd love to see you on social media as well. Follow along with everything that we're doing. Tony, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Nikki. Great show today. Listeners, thanks for tuning in, listening, viewing. And that does it for today's episode of Paladin Financial Talk.